We are so excited to introduce our listeners to a new app that just launched. Basecamp Ed is a community building platform for parents to find like-minded families and dedicated teachers in your area. Whether you homeschool your children, are curious about it, or simply want to build extracurricular activities, Basecamp Ed has you covered. Connect with local parents to create co-ops, form groups based on your child's interests, and use the calendar to schedule events with ease. Teachers and coaches can also create profiles and list their credentials for parents to use as a way to supplement subjects and activities. Homeschooling was never meant to be done alone. It takes a village. Build it with Basecamp Ed. Take advantage of this free resource and go download it today. You can also follow them on Instagram and Facebook at Basecamp Ed app for the latest updates.
Everyone wishes they planted a tree 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. Yeah. And so you start with the trees and just thinking through what grows well in my zone, what will my family enjoy, or what could we learn to enjoy if we haven't tried this, a pawpaw or a jackfruit, or, can we find somewhere so we can try it and see if we could learn to work with it.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me.
Today, Suzanne is talking with Jen Reelitz, founder of Food Forest DIY. They talk about Jen's journey to becoming self-reliant and the passion she has for helping others become self-reliant and teach the next generation these lost skills. Let's listen now.
So I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, and we did play outside a lot. When I was 4, we moved from like a little apartment condo to a house. Oh, yeah. And the house had a yard, and the yard had like a vacant lot next door. So we felt like we had like the woods next door, even though we were still in suburbia.
Perfect place to play.
Totally. We played a lot. I had one brother. My younger brother loved to like catch critters. So, lizards and turtles and snakes and frogs. And we were outside a lot.
I can relate. We did that. I even actually used to my favorite was Granddaddy Longlegs that I would catch, and I loved those. And stick bugs. That's what we called them. I don't know what the better name is.
We had lots of animals. Our back porch was like outside. A zoo, like lots of terrariums.
That's great. That's great. So you were outside a lot. Did you enjoy most outdoor activities? Was there anything in particular that you just loved as a kid?
We kind of just played. So we did play outside a lot, but for me being the oldest, my childhood was somewhat overshadowed by my mother's struggles.
Yeah.
So when my brother was born, my mom went into a season of very severe postpartum depression, and it lasted about 8 years. So
that's incredible. 8 years, and it was technically still considered postpartum?
It was very severe. I think at some point it just became, general depression, general anxiety with suicidal ideation. So that started when I was a toddler, and it continued until about middle school. And so it was just an extra kind of set of challenges because as the oldest girl, our kind of parent-child roles wound up getting turned around pretty quick. But there's lots of little ways that kind of God saw me through it, and my character was developed, and just I don't know, we're always healing and growing.
Always. And I think that when you're dealing with some of those kinds of struggles as a child, those are very formative years for your character development, for the things that you learn that you're going to push through and work toward. And there's so many things that sometimes we don't even process all of the things that are happening. But those challenges were young for you and during very formative years. What kinds of things did you do then to process and to kind of deal with that as a kid? Were you very aware of what you were dealing
Yes.
with?
Mm-hmm. And, with little kids, people don't tell little kids the truth because they think that, they're trying to protect them. But kids are smart, and we know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so everyone had tried to protect me because it's scary. Your mom's trying to end her life. That's a terrifying possibility. But I found her in the middle of an attempt when I was 8. So there was no denying it then. And I think I coped a lot of different ways. I definitely loved the Lord. And so, I prayed and, I believed in him and asked him for help. I think there were some unhealthy ways that I coped that we were just surviving. And so honestly, for me, sometimes it was turning to other things for comfort. My dad and I both really kind of used humor and like food as an escape. It was just like a way to comfort ourselves in the middle of a really challenging situation. And the Lord's really helped me just start to heal in different ways from different lies. I realized that what the enemy of our soul does is that during trauma, he comes in and he lies. And so the lies that I was hearing was like, you have to take responsibility for everyone around you because these adults are not trustworthy. And so this self-reliance came in. And it's funny because if you looked at me during high school or college or, as a young professional, I looked like a very high performer. I was a very high performer, get it done, could handle anything. And no one knew that I was operating out of wounds from trauma, right? But it's only recently in the context of inner healing that I've begun to unpack and honestly, like repent for some of those lies where I just wasn't like trusting because I thought I couldn't. I thought it wasn't safe.
Yeah. Well, again, the wounds that, I think that we suffer, I think for children, especially when you don't have someone to help you process all of that very effectively as a child, then you necessarily have to do it as you grow and to be healthy. I think it's funny in a way, though, that you used a word self-reliant and that you were a pretty high achiever. And I would say that even through probably high school and college, those are skill sets that you continue to probably really develop and rely on yourself. And now I would say that that's a little bit of really who you are right now, doing what you're doing now, right? Seriously, the self-reliance and very determined to build and to grow. And I think that that's amazing. We can get there when we get more into what's happening in your world right now. But so did you have extended family near you in your childhood that you were able to really have close relationships with?
Yes. And I just want to say too, when it comes to coping, my dad was really wise. And in about middle school, he tried to break down in the 80s. I feel like there was a stigma that like people who go to counseling are either weak or crazy. And so he tried to kind of destroy that. And so he basically said there are two kinds of people. There are smart people who know they have a problem and they go seek help right away. And then there are people who wait too long and they get really sick. So he made it okay that because he built my identity around being a smart girl.
Yeah.
So if smart girls know that they're like having a heart issue, they just go right and ask for help. And so he started us in counseling in about middle school. So gratefully, he did bring in those resources. But my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother, was kind of my stand-in mom. She actually lived in Rochester, New York, but she was a widow. And so she flew down anytime that he needed her. And I spent summers there and Christmases there. And she was the gardener. So she was the one whose, front beds were filled with, lilies and tulips and roses. And she grew mint to make mint iced tea and rhubarb for rhubarb pie and had apple trees in the backyard. So she's the one who I was definitely, getting my hands dirty and learning about the garden with.
Getting a little bit of that green thumb. So did she take you into the garden during those years and have you work with her?
Totally.
That's awesome. My grandfather did a lot of gardening, and I was telling my daughter just the other day the experiences that I had when I would spend time at their home when I was during the summer. And all of the things that he grew. And I never thought about it being so therapeutic to work in a garden and to do the things, but the things now that I know that they dealt with before in their lives, the gardening was a very therapeutic tool for them.
Hugely therapeutic.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true for just about anybody that puts their hands to the dirt and works in it. It's very therapeutic.
Yes. Yes. It's funny, even as I got into food forests and started writing the book, I realized wow, I think this whole time that I was really interested in gardening, it was like a way to help heal some things,
Yeah. There's something beautiful about watching the way that things grow in nature and the cycles of life in nature, and the flourishing and the nourishing that comes from it. And it's very healing, I think, in so many ways. And so your grandmother exposed you to some of those things, and you definitely are self-reliant, definitely had the tools to be determined to work and to build something. What else do you think from the time you went, from college, what was your goal at that point? What was your trajectory?
I was a funny young person. So imagine a 15 or 16-year-old who could watch C-SPAN for hours at a time and think that watching Senate committee hearings was endlessly interesting. That was me. So I went to school. I went to Gordon College in Wenham, Massachusetts, and I went to school for government, for political science and communications. And I interned in Washington, D.C., in the office of Elizabeth Dole, who at the time was the senator from North Carolina.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting time. I got to attend, Senate committee hearings with, Condoleezza Rice, and listen to different folks, testify. At that time, it was 2005.
Okay.
And so at that time, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, a lot of those folks were all in the Senate. So I would, ride in elevators and be in a cafe and whatever. I was very, very focused on politics at the time.
Okay.
And then I did work on some local things when I got home, with different, state senators and, congressional campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I kind of realized just with where I was going in life that I wanted to use those same skill sets that would serve you in government in the kingdom of God. And so I kind of transitioned into the nonprofit space and began working with a mission agency that was very focused on discipleship and church planting in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And I worked with them with the Timothy Initiative for about 10 years. So during that time, got to travel, to the Himalayas and Nepal and, India, and just, really connect with believers around the world and just get a new perspective.
That's amazing. And so during this time, were you married or were you still single during those years?
Both.
Okay.
It was before children. So I started working for them in 2013. So I was married, but no children. So actually husband got to come on some travels with me.
Oh, wow.
Then once babies came, I declined to travel, and just got to meet with our international leaders when they came to the States. So,
okay.
But it was a lot of storytelling because I was doing, communications and trying to communicate what was happening overseas.
Yeah. That is an amazing experience too for you. Did you do any other, while you were there, did you do anything with gardens or planting or building? I know sometimes when you go into those countries, you're working to help build a sustainable, place for the families to live and to prosper.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, the main rebuilding effort came after the earthquakes in Nepal. I don't know if you remember that, but I think it was 2014, really devastating earthquakes rocked Kathmandu. I think about 10,000 people died in a day. And I kind of helped launch some building efforts with the ministry. So I think by the end, we fundraised enough to build 100 homes, 7 churches, just help rebuild the leaders, homes and churches that had been destroyed in the earthquake.
Right.
we definitely had a ton of leaders who were gardening. What was funny to me was that, again, I was the storyteller. So I would get kind of the field stories and pictures, and I would just recognize in the pictures, oh, in their yard, it was like cassava and yucca and papaya. And so I would just like look at, oh, they're meeting under a mango tree because, we taught that, disciples of Jesus can meet anywhere. The church can meet anywhere, in a park, in a building, under a tree. And so we did have fellowships in Africa that were, meeting under the village mango tree kind of thing.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so I think the funny part for me was that most of my colleagues couldn't actually identify like the plants that were in the pictures, but I could,
So you said that was all before your kids were born. And then, after that, I'm assuming you didn't travel so much, but
No.
at what juncture, so now as an adult, have you always been involved in gardening and planting? No. Okay. So tell me a little bit about how that started for you and when and where.
Yeah, I would say it was always like maybe a little bit of a hobby. So when we were first married, we lived in this little garage apartment. And I remember that like on our porch, I had a little pot with a pineapple and I had a sweet potato from the store that had sprouted. So I went and buried it in the backyard. And I was just amazed by how huge it got. And it was always just it was small. And then when we bought a house, our first house had a garden bed where very clearly like a gardener had lived in this house. There were railroad ties, a real garden, several fruit trees, a Barbados cherry tree, mango trees, ackee trees. And so the garden almost like spoke to me. It was like, okay, there's a garden back here. I need to fill it with something. So I remember borrowing my husband's pickup truck and going to the dump to get, compost and filling it and, starting to grow tomatoes and kale and kind of like the basic garden stuff. But I didn't really get keenly interested in food forest until I'm going to say it was about 2017. I was right in the middle of having children. I was literally pregnant or nursing for 5 years straight. And so I had lots of time, during nursing sessions and, middle of the night nursing sessions to attend the University of YouTube.
Yes.
And it kind of occurred to me during that season that we all, as parents, are really, really dependent on this corporate system, on these grocery stores. And I just began to ask questions and just begin to wonder, like, what would it look like to be more self-sufficient, to know that if I needed to, I could produce enough food to feed my family. And is that part of my responsibility? Like, as a parent, like if something weird happens, like, is it Publix's job or the government's job, or is it my job to feed my kids? And like, how did we lose touch and how do we get back? And just started asking those questions.
And so with that, you found yourself, I'm guessing this was your first home's not your current home?
Correct.
Okay, so you were growing and building that there. You started with that. And how did you move to the next level of food forest?
Well, in 2019, we had a lot of friends who were moving north to this area that's kind of you'd say an agricultural area, right? Equestrian, more homes that are an acre, 2 acres. But I'm a city kid. I grew up in the heart of West Palm Beach. I remember thinking that like Jupiter is like the north end of the world. Like what's past North Palm? Nothing. So the idea of moving to Jupiter Farms was like ridiculous. But I feel like the Lord kind of worked on my heart, and I had this idea of food forest and really wanted to be able to practice it. And on my little, 1/4 acre lot, I was limited in how much I could do with that. And this community was also a lot closer to my husband's work. It was going to cut his commute in half. So in 2019, we moved, and I feel like it was the grace and providence of God that we moved when we did, because at the time we had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And 6 months after we moved in, COVID shut down, right? Parks are closed, beaches closed. I've got teeny little kids, and gratefully we're, they've got 2 acres of yard. Wow.
Yeah.
That was like life-changing.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So they were pretty young still.
Very young.
And you moved. Was there anything there built in the way of gardens or
There were
edible?
2 fruit trees.
Okay.
So there was an avocado tree, which turned out to be a seedling. So I am trying to top work it. I don't grow mangoes or avocados from seed just because you don't get great quality and the seeds are big, whatever. The mango, though, was pretty great. And what's so interesting about it is this was a 40-year-old mango tree that a couple years before we bought the house, the previous owner had cut it to the ground. So you're talking totally cut it down. That tree today is 30 feet tall and producing. So
That's
I always tell
incredible.
people when I'm looking at a mango that's poorly shaped, where the branching doesn't start until it's, 8 feet, 10 feet. I want
Right.
trees that are shaped like a lollipop that are lower. I'll tell them, take this 30-year-old mango tree, cut it down to 3 feet. And they look at me like I'm crazy.
You've lost your mind.
But I'm like, listen, if it's 30 feet tall, the roots are 30 feet deep. It's
Yeah.
deep enough to handle this. This is how they actually rejuvenate mango trees, in the orchards in India. So anyway.
So tell me where you started learning about all of it. You were looking at YouTube. You were
I was
taking
really
in all this
looking at
information.
YouTube, but I was honestly acting like a student. I had my
Yeah.
notepad and my paper and I was taking notes. I was not just consuming to consume or to be entertained. I was very much focused on learning.
Right.
And so I was just making lists of things that grow in the sun and things that grow in the shade and trees and shrubs and getting books. And actually I had a mentor, I can't forget this, my dear friend Heather Dorsey, who was a mentor in every way, like a spiritual mentor, a practical mentor. One of the people you look at and you think I want to be like her when I grow up,
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that for me, again, kind of growing up with the gap in my relationship with my own mother, just because of her own things that were going on, the Lord was so gracious to provide a lot of women who filled that role in different seasons, kind
Right.
of as a mentor, spiritual mother. But I was always, wiser, I think, than most kids my age. So I was looking for mentors and very honoring when I found them. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's
so
important.
yes.
It is really, it's truly important. Yeah.
Yeah. So she had planted her whole yard as an edible landscape 10 years before. So I
Okay.
got to see what it would look like in 10 years. And then every year for my birthday, she would take me to a fruit tree nursery, buy me some fruit trees. She's really encouraged and fostered my love for it and had kind of been asking all the same questions that I was asking.
Okay. So where do you start with planning this? Because, it's one of those things that if you go from your back patio with a few boxes of herbs and mints to the flower bed and get that going a little bit better, but then all of a sudden you've got this huge network of a food forest. Like, how do you even, I know it's a step at a time. Did you do it a step at a time, or did you just go all in and go big and just do it?
I did. I went big and I made mistakes.
Okay.
So I would say that if I was telling you what I would tell a client today, you start with the trees, because I always say everyone wishes they planted a tree 20 years ago, but the next best time is today.
Yeah.
And so you start with the trees and just thinking through what grows well in my zone, what will my family enjoy, or what could we learn to enjoy if we haven't tried this, a pawpaw or a jackfruit, or, can we find somewhere so we can try it and see if we could learn to work with it.
Right.
So I started with trees, and in general, the rule is you want to plant your tall trees on the north side, and you get your best sun on the south side. And every piece of land is a square. So it doesn't have to be the north side of your property, but if you pick, let's say, an island in your yard that you want to plant 5 fruit trees, and 2 of those trees tend to be taller, and 2 of the trees tend to be smaller, you would put the tallest trees on the north side of that island and the
Yeah.
smaller trees on the south side.
Okay.
So that the way the sun falls, the taller trees, if they shade the smaller trees, then those cherry trees aren't going to flower. They're not going to fruit, right? So that's why we do it like that.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So you went into it big. So you made some mistakes.
I
You
did.
said
Yeah, I killed
So-
some trees for sure.
kill some trees. Oh my goodness, I could see myself doing that, because I know for me sometimes when I start working toward that, I want to do a lot. So I'll try to do a lot, but then it's not managed as well for me, or I don't
Yes.
know everything that I need to know. So I think that for me, having someone who, and you've written a book too, which is great for somebody that's trying to just like process, how do you do this? Where do you start? And like you said, you offer services even for consulting
Yeah.
and helping people to do that. Have you found that that's been is it a very popular movement for people right now in your communities and in Florida in general? Are you finding that is a direction that a lot of people are moving in?
Massively, yes. So I would say since COVID, that's, if you were to ask any grower, let's say the big growers down in Homestead, they're growing out, 5 million fruit trees a year. They could track all of today's growth back to COVID.
That's crazy.
So COVID made everyone a gardener. We're all interested in gardening.
Isn't that interesting though?
It is. I think people began to wake up like the system is not reliable and we don't know what they're spraying on the produce and we have yard. Like, why aren't we doing this?
Yeah, I was going to say just for a minute too, just talking a little bit about the health side of it. I can't tell you the number of times that I have conversations about my grandparents who lived into their mid-90s. And I'm always like, they ate the most simple, basic foods that they grew in their garden and, processed on their own. Like all of these things that were super simple in our world today. No really processed foods, nothing that was sprayed with all kinds of, insecticides or pesticides or anything like that. Just very basic. They took care of it. They knew where it came from. They ate it. And so many of the things that they, lived through really hard times, the depression, whole 9 yards, they survived because they knew how to.
Yes.
And they thrived at times because they knew how to.
Yes.
So I think that's huge as well.
Yes.
I think that people are learning that is a skill that was kind of a lost skill for a while.
Very much a lost skill. It's remarkable to me that, you could get a PhD in the United States, spend $1 million on your education and not know how to grow potatoes. What this is so basic. I take kids, I also do foraging walks, where I'll take kids out in the woods and teach them how to identify different plants. Your average American kid can identify up to 1,000 corporate logos, but they can't identify 10 native plants in the region where they live. Most adults don't know the difference between the leaf of an oak tree and the leaf of a maple tree, right? Like the iconic, maple leaf that's, also geography, like the flag of Canada. So I'm kind of on this mission to just take people back to basics, humanity started in the garden.
Yeah. And when you say those statistics out loud, doesn't it sometimes just come across as mind blowing? I mean, you think about as smart as everything is, smartphones, smartwatches, smart people, whatever, and the things that we don't know how to do. And so I really love that people are trying to connect again with ways to be sustainable and ways to provide for themselves and their families. I think that's amazing. So it's thriving. And you live in a great state of Florida, and there's a lot of people with a long growing season here. So it's amazing. But so you do consulting I know that you, like I said, you've written your book. What other ways would you say that people can get connected to communities or other people? I mean, if somebody's not near you, what are
Sure.
ways that people can dig in and start to really pursue food forests themselves?
There's lots of communities online. So,
Yeah.
like even just on Facebook, there's a group called Florida Food Forest. If you look in your town, if you look, your town and then food forest, you'd be surprised the number of groups you could find. Like we've got a town around here named Loxahatchee,
Yeah.
and there's a group called the Loxahatchee Victory Gardeners, and they get together all the time. They host workshops and plant swaps, and I would just say look on the apps, look on Nextdoor, look on Facebook, look for food forest, permaculture, gardening. Are there groups that already exist that you can join, or should you start a group? Great way to connect, meet people, and build your food forest for free or cheap is finding other local gardeners with locally adopted seeds, sharing cuttings. There's lots of ways to connect and build community in the context
Yeah.
of gardening.
Let me ask you this couple of questions. Do you find, and then this may be totally off the wall, but I find it, where we live, do you find that in the past few years that even HOA communities are allowing more edible plants and gardening that may have been more prohibited
Yes.
in the past?
Yes. Yeah. I would say folks in HOAs, a lot of HOAs are allowing them, or people are finding workarounds.
Yeah.
So there are some HOAs that say you're only allowed to have fruit trees in pots. I'm like, well, pots come in real big sizes. And, we can plant, dwarf, what they call condo mangoes,
Yeah.
dwarf avocados, trees that stay small. We've kind of just found ways to be flexible and work around
Okay.
the
Yeah.
guidelines.
That's good. And then how do you direct people who struggle with things like, deer, rabbits, squirrels, things that like to eat what you're growing?
That's super hard. So there's
Yeah.
lots of kind of creative, fencing and different deterrents. I actually found one recently that is just motion activated sprinklers. Just
Oh,
depending on the
that's
kind of
interesting.
critter that you're dealing with. People have creative solutions for dealing with
That's what I was
those
gonna.
problems.
So there are workarounds to those things. I know, when you're talking to people, a lot of the times, those are the frustrations that people have when they're starting on the smaller scale of, I just wanted to have, a few things in my garden and everything gets eaten. Or
Right.
So whatever. So I think that it's important not to give up, but to find the workarounds and, to know that, like you said, if you can connect to a community, I think you can get a lot of help with
Yes.
those ideas and those things, that people are trying to overcome and learn, because it's a lot easier to just throw the shovel down and go to the Publix down the road
It is, but
and pick up those things. But
I would say think about the next generation. Like
there you go.
if our kids and our grandkids, if there was ever a generation that really needed to get outside, that needed to get off screens, that needed to get their hands dirty and just be in touch with the earth, it's this generation.
It's just, you're right.
And I mean, gardening, it helps fight, mild depression, anxiety, ADHD. It's very therapeutic for folks who've been through trauma. It's so good on so many levels. I think in my book, I identified eight reasons it's good for, mind, body, soul, spirit, wallet, children, our time, and our future.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't
So many
you?
things. Why wouldn't you? There you go. Why wouldn't you? Well, I love the conversation we've been able to have today. And I've always been mesmerized by the garden itself, and then the big, beautiful landscaped gardens and food forests. It's to me, I think they're beautiful and amazing, and I love to see them, and I love to see them grow and flourish. And there's nothing like seeing the beautiful fruit trees and I grew up in part of South Florida myself in the Keys, and the limes and the lemons and just all of the citrus that we had. And it was just amazing,
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like you said, we started in the garden. And I think as a kid, running through and being around all of those things, it was life-giving because even when you don't understand why as a small child, it really is. It's nurturing your soul, I think, to be out
Yes.
there, to interact with nature, to interact with the soil, and to experience it as a kid. And I think that that is part of the hope for this next generation, is that if we're getting them outside and we're getting them connected and teaching the skills that they need in order to provide for themselves and to feed themselves, that there is hope for the next generation, our kids and our grandkids, not to be so dependent and reliant on others, and improve their health and their mental health, their physical health, spiritual health, all of it. So, but, I thank you so much. And I think that you probably can share a couple of places that people can connect with you, if you would do that for us, and
Sure.
tell people how to connect with you.
Yeah. So, of course, we're on Instagram, Food Forest DIY, Instagram, Facebook. There's a website, right? foodforestdiy.com.
Yeah.
And then the book is available on Amazon. It's Food Forest Revolution. And it's really written for folks in Florida who are new to the idea of food forest and just need some help. I literally downloaded everything I know that I would, share in a consulting conversation in a book. And I tried to make it just simple, easy to apply. Yeah.
It is. It's very manageable information. So it's not overwhelming. That's good. I can attest to that because I read it going into it with the mindset of how in the world will I ever get to that? What really interesting projects are you working on right now? Anything new, anything exciting that you would share?
Yeah. I just had the honor and privilege of working on a food forest labyrinth, which was probably one of the more exciting designs that I've done recently. So kind of your basic idea of like a walking labyrinth, right, with a center and then kind of emanating out. That installation included 88 fruit trees, 620 support plants. Our crews removed 25,000 pounds of sod. Just the amount of topsoil and organic mulch that was brought in was just truck after truck. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And then I'm doing lots of, even just lots of small backyard installs. Like I love it. From small to big, like I just want to help my neighbors grow more food. And then recently I've been kicking up and doing more of the foraging walks, which has been a lot of fun. Just teaching kids how to identify plants in the woods and just really enjoy getting back in touch with nature.
That's really interesting to me. And I know you're going to be speaking about that some even at FPEA at our convention in May, which I may have to duck in and listen to that because foraging is extremely interesting to me. And again, I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head. We can't identify. There's so many native plants that so many of us can't identify and wouldn't know what was safe to use.
Like they're edible, they're medicinal, they're good for pollinators. Like a weed is just a native plant that grew in the wrong spot and you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a plant that grows right now that when my kids get stung by a bee, I run out to the road, grab a leaf. If you were doing it properly, you'd use a mortar and pestle and pound it into a poultice. But a mom in a pinch is just chewing it up. Yeah. And you put it on the sting and it like the kid is, not in pain within a minute.
That's
so
crazy.
There's just so much like medicine and food that's literally in the yard. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I did have one last thing I wanted to ask. I always enjoy asking this question. And I think that we have so many sources, but has there been a quote or a verse or something wise that someone said to you that either growing up really encouraged you to keep moving forward or something that now is there that you really hold on to and, use this as encouragement in your life that you could share?
Sure. Because of my, childhood history, kind of learning to take too much responsibility and, take care of everyone else and kind of neglect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been on this journey of kind of undoing some of that. And so one quote that helped me for a long time was, trying to control things over which I am powerless is emotionally unhealthy. So I would kind of just look for places where I was trying to be in control, and, you can't control other people. They're just doing what they're doing. But recently, the more practical iteration of that, someone gave me this tool, and it's been really helpful because I have a tendency to want to say yes to everything. Yes to speaking, yes to ministry, yes to whatever. And that means I'm actually saying no to my husband and no to my kids. So I'm trying to be more careful with my yes. It's the 4 P's, and the P's are pause, pray, peeps, and peace. And so before I say yes or make a decision, like pause, take a second, let them know you'll get back to them. Pray, like talk to God about it. Am I assigned to be doing this in this season, right? Peeps, get with your people, talk to your spouse, talk to your best friend. Like, does this sound, there were things that I thought sounded like a great idea. And then I ran it by my husband. And he was like, are you nuts? That's a Monday night. That'll never work. So, and then peace, right? Like, do you have peace? So just for those of us who try to, take on too much, take care of other people, feel this sense of responsibility that's beyond ourselves, kind of running through those 4 things can help us maintain more peace and sanity in our own, in our own self and in our home.
Yeah, wise words. Definitely wise words. Well, I know that I have certainly enjoyed talking to you. I could probably talk to you a lot more and pick your brain about a ton of vegetables and plants and fruit trees.
Yeah.
And I might corner you somewhere later. But
feel free. It's my favorite, one of my favorite things to talk about.
Favorite things to do. But I thank you for being here today, and just for sharing your story and, how you got to be interested. I think sometimes people feel like, when you're doing the things that you're doing now, that there was something in you that taught you growing up, and it's just easy and it came. But sometimes I think some of the things that we have embraced in our lives as adults were things we had to work really hard to get to, and had to learn and challenge ourselves. So I'm really encouraged by you sharing your story, and I know that others will be as well. And thank you for being so transparent and just willing to talk with me today. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida, or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at FPEA.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.